Okay, so now that we've had a brief look over the UI and we're a little bit more familiar with it, we can have a look at how to actually navigate around the scene and get a bit more comfortable with like moving around. So this is very, very easy. So let's bring back our little list. This is all based around the Alt key. So Alt plus right mouse button is tumble. Basically rotating around the object. And again, all I'm doing there is just holding Alt and then holding down left mouse. Sorry, left mouse, I put right mouse then, didn't I? Left mouse button. Left mouse button, sorry. It's just rotating around. This is often called tumble, but it's basically I'm rotating around the scene. Alt and let's tumble. Alt and middle mouse button is pan. Pan's basically just moving the camera side to side, up and down, whatever. So I've got rotate, Alt left mouse, pan, Alt middle mouse. And then we've got Alt and right mouse button is zoom. So holding down right mouse button, dragging forward and backwards gives me my zoom. So Alt left mouse, Alt middle mouse, Alt right mouse. That's simple. And what I would recommend is literally just do this a little bit. Just get used to dead easy. Now there is another way of zooming as well. So we've got something called what I call a dolly zoom, which is like a film thing to do with like smooth zooming. You see how smooth that is. The other zoom is if I just roll my mouse wheel forward and backwards. We're gonna do zoom less, but this is like incremental like jumps, like click, 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 click. And that's just, there's just two zooms for us, that's all. One's nice and smooth, one's a little bit jumpy. So feel free to use whichever you want. You'll get used to using all that kind of jazz as much as you can. Cool. So that's scene navigation. That's really, really simple. That's all it comes down to. You just move around the scene like that. Alt left mouse, Alt middle mouse, Alt right mouse, rolling the scroll wheel back and forth. Now it's really important to get used to moving around the scene, because one thing I do not want people to do is get stuck in a view, like stuck in just looking at something from one angle, or from like the front view or something, which might become a bit of a thing because a majority, if not all of you, have only ever done 2D art, and obviously there's no rotating around an object. There's no zooming in and out and rotating and panning. Well, there's panning and zooming, but you know, in the sense of 3D, you've never really used this kind of stuff before, so it's always good to get used to just moving around an object. Okay. Okay. So 3 minutes, bang easy. That's a really, really easy part to kind of get your head around. Now, what I'm going to do now is just bring in an object. We're going to go into how to create objects in the next video. But now what I want to do is just introduce you to a few concepts of 3D and a little bit of selection stuff inside here, like what we can do with Maya. Okay. Okay, so in 3D, you have three components. You have a vertex, an edge, and a face. A vertex is a point of data. So if I go here, this is a vertex. If you have a single vertex on its own, not connected to anything, all you've got is a point of data. This isn't actually a 3D thing at all. This is a infallible bit of data. Has no depth, has no height or anything. If you connect two vertexes together, you get an edge. Now this edge, again, is not a 3D object, but it is now a little bit more of a shape than a single point. Now what we cannot do with an edge is we can't bend it. It's a straight line from one point to another. So how we get really smooth things in 3D is literally just having more edges or more faces or more vertexes. Very, very simple. However, one thing that we're going to really, really want to kind of be aware of is, and we're going to kind of talk about this, it's a little bit more psychological than like just like straight up modeling, is the human eye, when we look at things on a screen, does a lot of work for us. If we see something that is fairly curved, it doesn't need to be 6 million polygons in a curve just to say that's a little bit curvy. You know, if it's like 4 or 5 or 6, if our brain goes, okay, yeah, that's a curve, that's all we really need. And it really does depend on the object, the size of the object, the importance, and if it's like a big portfolio piece. But generally, we want to be using as fewer polygons as possible so that we can have our file sizes be low. We can have it less of an impact on a game engine, that kind of jazz. Okay, so an edge is the creation of two vertexes being connected. Now, if we connect three vertexes, 1, 2, 3, what we will have is something called, I'll create one here, something called a triangle or a tri. So if it's just two vertexes, you'll just get a line segment like this. If it's one vertex, you just get a point of data like that. So that is nothing. No matter how much I zoom in or zoom out away from this, all it is just a single point of data. Two vertexes connected together creates a line. Three of them create a triangle. Now this is a polygon. What's being created in the middle is an actual bit of geometry. That's a polygon. That's a face. But this is a flat face. This is not a. It's not got any depth. You can think about that. This is a perfectly, not even paper thin, and an atom thin piece of geometry. So it's got really no depth at the minute. But we have a face to work off. We have something right there. So that's how polygons are created. That's how geometry is created. Okay. So after that as well, when you have four vertexes connected to each other, you get a quad. Now, triangles are perfectly fine. You know, we often use triangles for stuff, but the importance of like what we should be using over the other is you always need to be using a quad over a triangle. Quads are the best thing. Quads are our hero shade. If we can get everything being made up of a quad, we're happy. If we need to use some triangles, that's not so bad. It's not the worst thing. But sometimes we use triangles to solve issues where we got like more geometry from one area going into a much simpler geometric area. It might be a thing, especially in character art, we might have some triangles to solve little issues with edge flow and stuff. But you know, these two are the siblings, and they're okay. You know, they're okay. They can work together. Most important one is it's a quad. We can use them, but the triangle is less important. Quite often as well, when you take stuff into game engines, it triangulates it anyway. So what's the point in building anything in triangles? Also, it's near impossible to actively build in triangles. It's much easier to build in quads. Now, after that, we have something called an n-gon. An n-gon is something like this, where you have more than 4 sides. So let's bring it up here. A bit chronological, there we go. So, there we go. So, in the middle, we've got our quad, that's our most important shape. On the right hand side here, this is our n-gon. Now, it's an n-gon because it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. And we really don't want these in our final piece. We can create n-gons. We'll often create n-gons through the whole kind of process of modeling. But as long as we fix them, as long as we solve these n-gons and either turn them into a group of triangles or a quad and a triangle or a bunch of quads, you know, as long as you fix it, it's okay. But don't worry about like how do you fix that kind of stuff, because this is what we're going to be going into in class. I'm just introducing you to polygons. So triangle, quad, n-gon. We don't want these, we can get rid of them. We want to actually not use them at all. Quads are our favorite. Cool. Now, what you've been noticing there as well, I've been able to access certain components. Now, components is just a way of me saying either vertex, edge, or face. Now, and you often see these little menus crop up, like what happens here or what happens there. This is really, really easy. So I've got my cube selected here, and I want to access the faces of that cube. It's very, very easy. If I just click it, so I press Q for my selection. So bring my little thing. Press Q for our selection. I'm going to click on my object. So I've got my cube selected now. You can tell it's selected because it's green. And I want to select this top face here for whatever reason. Right, if I just hover over, it doesn't matter where I hover over, but I just hover over my object and I hold down right click, we get this. Now this is what I call the context menu because it's in what context we want to be selecting our object. And really, I just care about what's going up on this little like ring here, and I'm keeping the right mouse button held down here. I'm not releasing. This little list of menus here, a lot of this, 9% of this, we're not going to touch. We'll be touching a few things at the very bottom, like the material stuff. But generally, I just want to use this. Now, I want to select a face. So what I want to do is look on this. I want to see if I can see the word face. I can see it twice here, vertex face and face. Well, I know I only want faces. So I'm just going to hover over where it says face and then release. And then you can see now the wires are turned blue. The wireframe is turned blue, which means we're in component mode rather than object mode. And if I just move my mouse around, you're going to see these big red boxes appear. Now, this is just saying, do you want to select this face? Do you want to select this face? Do you want to select this face? If I decide I want to select this top face, I'll just click it, and it turns orange, which means that that's been selected. And then I can just get my movement tool, pressing W, and then just move it up and down, or move it around. Do some stuff. Now, maybe I want to select an edge. So I do the same thing. I just hover over my object. It doesn't matter if I'm in this mode or anything else. I can just hover over my object, find edge, release. And now I can do the same thing. Now it's red on the edges because we're in edge mode. And then when I find an edge I like, you, then I can go in there and start to move that around. Using scale, maybe a bit of rotate. Dead simple. Last one, obviously vertex. If you want to have vertexes. Now there, the corners are turning purple, and if I just hover over, you're going to see that turn a bit red. If I click that, now I'm in vertex mode, and I can just grab and move vertexes around. That's simple. And all that is just holding down right click. That kind of access here. Now there's a couple of other things inside there. We've got something called object mode, and that will just return us to object mode. So this is, I'm going to try and keep this like, this might be the most complex thing I say in these videos. You've got an object mode selection, and then you've got component mode selection. Think about the object mode is you're just selecting the entire thing on its own. The component mode, component being face, edge, or vertex. So in component mode, so you can see up here as well, this is currently in object mode, in these three little icons up here. In the middle one, we're in component, we're in object mode. There you go, so object mode. If I hold down right click, go to face mode. Well, that should change, but it doesn't sometimes. Should be there. There you go, should be that one. Don't really matter. But yeah, that's all it is. Just holding down right click, finding what you want, finding what you need. Now the other three on top of there, the other two, you've got vertex face. Now, vertex face has nothing to do with either vertexes or faces as we would normally use them, where we can actually go into vertex and mess with vertexes, go into face and mess with faces. What vertex face does is it just basically shows you, it displays the different faces broken up. I've not broken my model here. This is literally just showing me all the individual faces kind of separated out. This is useful to see if you've made any mistakes, and it's just useful to see a few little things. Well, I'm probably going to use this kind of thing to look for faults in people's meshes quite often. So that's vertex face. Now UV here is a funny one because if you go too far in this, you go into a submenu like this. I have to drag back this thing to like there you go. So you can see where if I move my thing, you can see how like around my mouse I've got this little like stick that follows it. So if I drag that out like that, if I want to go back to that menu, because I've gone into this UV menu, I've got to drag that stick back to that little dot. There you go. So UV is basically it's the skin of our object. The UV is the skin of our object. And we even within UV, and there are like their own little face modes, their own little vertex mode, but they're not called vertexes, called UVs, and their own little it's a different world of selection essentially. And this is just giving us the opportunity to select stuff in the scene that relates to UVs, but we're not going to have any of those yet, so let's not worry about that. Okay. So that's how we do some selection stuff. So even within this selection, we can just. So remember, all I'm doing there as well is pressing W, E, or R to get the tools that I want. So do the scale in there, select this face, I'm going to push it in, I'm going to grab this edge, and I'm going to rotate that around, get this, and I'm going to scale it out, and then I'm going to rotate like that. So, you know, that's another thing I'd explain, I'd want you to do as well, is just get used to actually selecting stuff. Don't matter if you make a mess or anything like that. Just get select, move, select, move. Don't try and make anything. Just have fun and have a play. Now, one new hotkey I'm going to bring in is there's two of them. There's delete, and then there's control plus backspace. Right, annoyingly, there are two ways of deleting stuff inside Maya that I really want people to be thinking about from like day one. If I'm deleting a face, just the face on its own, I can just hit delete. Now delete just gets rid of that face, so now we can see inside of our object. That's fine. And if I wanted to delete an object entirely, I can select the object in object mode. So I hold down right click, go to object mode, select it, click delete, I delete the entire thing. Now, I can absolutely see why they've done this, but it's a little bit annoying because it's not super clear. If you go to edge mode and say I want to delete these three edges, if I just hit delete, oh, sorry, I'll do, there we go. Okay, I set to set up a little bit of an example then because the object was a setup to show you what I mean. This is going to become like, so the reason I'm showing you this now in the very beginning rather than waiting much later on is because this is going to become important like really early on. So if I just want to hit delete, I delete the entire thing. If I just want to delete a face, I can just select a face and hit delete. However, so geometric anatomy, you've got edges, and every time you got an edge that converges, you've got edges converging there, you get a vertex right there. And that generates a quad or a triangle, whatever you're doing. Now, if I just come in, I'm just going to select this entire loop going all the way around there, and I'm just going to hit delete. And that looks perfectly fine. It looks perfectly fine, except when I move my edge selection over there, instead of getting one long edge, I'm getting this split up into two. Annoyingly, if you just grab an edge going all the way around, like that, and hit delete, all we're deleting is the edge itself. We're not deleting the vertexes. So I just went back into vertex mode there, and we've still got these vertexes left behind, going all the way around. This is really annoying. It's not something that I kind of want Maya to change, or I think they should, but it's just something we have to get used to doing. Now, what this does is it creates those n-gons. This is one of the prime reasons people create n-gons. If I delete those edges, it still leaves the vertexes behind. And these vertexes break an edge. So like, there's no vertexes across this edge. So this makes one long edge here. But with these vertexes left behind, what we actually have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have an 8-sided shape, which is obviously twice the faces that we want. Now, if you do have this happen, you can literally just go around and delete them. You can go around, select those, delete them, select those ones down there, delete them, select ones there, delete them. That's fine, but we don't want to be doing that for everything. Like every time we delete an edge, for instance, if we want to delete an edge, what we can do instead is just, if we want to select all these around, so I select that, hold shift, then do a multi-select where I can hold shift and select them. Control backspace deletes both the edge and the vertex. Okay, that's the most complex thing I'm going to go over in this video, but I will be going to go over it a lot more in class. But try and remember that. Control backspace for deleting edges if it's going all the way around something, or just delete if you want to get rid of stuff. But I will say, if you're deleting edges like I did before, if you want to get rid of these, it will collapse the mesh. You'll obviously lose that right angle right there. Okay. So what we covered in there, we've covered selecting objects, selecting components of an object, so face, edge, vertex. We've looked into a vertex face and the UV selection there. We also have multiple. So inside this menu, you have multi, which I don't use that often. I'm a little bit old school, but multi is a combination of face, edge, and vertex. This means you can go around and select in one selection mode an edge, a vertex, or whatever. Now, I'm not super precise with it, even though I've been using mine for years. I'm still not super precise. So I can sometimes get a bit frustrated with that. But all the multi does is just gives you the selection of all three in one tool. Now, you saw me do some multiple selections before, and I'll just go over how I did that. If I want to select multiple faces, I can just click a face, hold shift, move to the face I want to select, hold shift, and I've got multiple faces selected. Same thing for edges and vertexes. Hold shift, just like any Windows kind of stuff. If you want to do multi-selections, you hold shift. Now there are quick ways of selecting like all the way around. Like going all the way around where I've just selected all the way around there. There are quick ways of doing that. Not going to go over it in this video. Going to be something we'll go over in class. And then the very, very last thing I'm going to just quickly show you is quite often you've seen me with a wireframe on this object, these blue lines. We can turn them on and off just using this icon here at the top of our workspace. Quite often, it's all right to see like a final mesh without a wireframe on, but as we're working on our meshes, as we're kind of still working, we do want to have the wireframe turned on so we can see what's going on. We can see if there's any issues with the mesh. We get a better idea about where to put edges or all this kind of jazz. Okay, cool. So the little bit of a shorter one than the last one, but a little bit more information inside there. Maybe some of that was a little bit kind of complex. Again, don't worry about too much about like absolutely understanding everything so far. It's all about just trying to get as much information in the very, very beginning. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how we can actually take something like this and use our big 5 tools. Technically it's like big 9, but really it's big 5 tools to actually create something and actually do some basic modeling. Okay.